Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture we are going to learn how you could switch from one activity to another activity by using a concept which is called as an intent. So what intent allows you to do, it basically allows you to switch from one activity to other activity. So let's say you might have witnessed this while using some applications, like you are on one screen and when you hit a particular button you are redirected now to a new activity or a new screen. So we are going to do the exact same thing in this lecture as well. So what we will do is that we will have one activity, so we will learn how to add another activity to it as well. We will have a button on the first activity, and when we click that particular button we will be redirected to the new activity. So without wasting any time, let's go ahead and learn how to do that. So the first thing which we will do is that we will design the layout of the first activity. So if you go to text, as this thing is grid layout, let's change it to relative layout for the ease of use. And now I'm going to just go ahead, get a button over here, add it over here right at the center, and I'm going to name the button as, let's say, click here. So this is going to be click here. And also, to make sure that this is the first activity, we will have a text view here as well, which is basically going to say that this is the first activity. So let's say this thing says first activity. So once this thing is done, we are good to go. Now the next thing which you need to do is that to the on click of this button you need to add a method. So we type in on click over here, and this is going to be, let's say, button clicked. So we have not yet defined the button click method, but we will do that in this activity right here. So what we will do is that we will type in public void button clicked, and in this we will pass in the view v. And now the next thing which you need to do is that you do need to create another activity, so that when the user clicks on this button he should be redirected to the new activity. So the code for that will be written inside over here, but even before that we need a new activity. So in order to create a new activity, simply go on this folder, right click, go to new, go to activity, and select a basic activity or an empty activity. So we will select the empty activity over here, and let's name this activity as activity 2. Now you could go ahead and hit finish. So what this is going to do now is that it's going to create your second activity. So this is activity2.java, and this is the layout for that particular activity. So let me just go ahead and keep things in places. So this is the first activity's Java file, this is the first activity's layout file, this is the second activity's layout file, and this is the second activity's Java file. So in the second activity, what we will do is that we will add up a plain text which will specify that this is the second activity. So we'll go to the text view and change this thing to, let's say, second activity. So now we know that this thing is a second activity and not the first one. And now what you need to do is that you need to write in the code over here, which basically takes you to the new activity. So here what you need to do is that you need to use something which is called as an intent. So intent is basically a method which allows you to switch from one activity to other activity. So we will learn how to use intents to get to another activity. So in order to create an intent, we type intent equals new intent, and to this intent what you need to do is that first you need to pass in this, give a comma, and then you need to pass in to which particular activity you want to switch to. So in this case you want to switch to activity 2, so the name of the second activity is activity 2. So we type in activity 2 dot class. So once this thing is done, we are good to go. Now once this intent is created, what this intent basically states that we have to switch from this activity to a new activity which is nothing but activity2.class. Now once this intent is created, we need to use the start activity method. So we type start activity, and to the start activity method we need to pass in the intent. So once we are done with this, we are pretty much good to go. So now what we will do is that we will save the code in all of these files, and we'll try to run this application on my device and see how this thing works. So I'm going to launch this application on my device, and I'm going to record my screen so that you will be able to see what I'm able to see. Okay, so as you could see, the application is up and running, and here right now we have the first activity because this thing says that it is the first activity. And when I click this button, as you could see, now we are on to the second activity. Now when I hit the back button, we are again redirected back to the first activity, and again when I click this button, as you could see, we are passed on to the new activity. So that's how you could basically go ahead and use intent to switch from one activity to another activity. So in this lecture, what we essentially did is that we have created a new activity. We have a text view on the new activity which says that this is the second activity. And then what we basically did is that on the button click event, we have added an intent by typing intent equals new intent, and you need to pass in this and the name of the next activity which you want to switch to. So in this case, as we wanted to switch to the activity 2, we have specified that name over here. And then finally, what you need to do is that you need to use the start activity method and pass in that intent to that start activity method so that the new activity could actually get started. So that's it for this lecture, and in the next lecture what we will do is that we will study how to pass messages with the intent. So what usually happens is that you also do need to learn how you could pass in data from the first activity to other activity. So in this case, this was the first activity, this was the second one. So we simply switched from the first activity to second activity, but we have not passed any data from the first activity to the second one. So we are going to actually learn how to do that. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.